Welcome back to the Chit Chat and Crochet podcast with me, Daphne Du Maurier. Today is really exciting because today we're going to be talking about Rebecca in our very first book club episode. So go and get yourself a cup of tea. I've got a cup of tea, I've got a glass of water, I've got my book, I've got my crochet. I am ready to discuss this book in full. So let's get started. So right now it is so gloomy outside. Even though it's April, it's so gloomy. It's raining. The sky is grey. The apple blossom tree in my garden is in bloom. And it's really giving me those Rebecca vibes. Because you think the book that starts, doesn't it, when she's in Monaco. And then, no, she's not in Monaco. Yeah, she's in Monaco. She's in Monte Carlo, Monaco. And she ends up coming home with Maxim de Winter back to Manderley in the spring. And it's this really beautiful picture that Daphne Du Maurier paints of Cornwall with its slate grey seas. And that's kind of the feeling that I've got from the weather this morning, which is lovely. I'm actually filming this quite early in the morning. It's about 7 o'clock. Because Red and Jackson are still in bed, and I thought, you know what, this is like a perfect opportunity to come down, steal a little moment of quiet with my little Tilly dog, and we can sit here and we can discuss this book in full. Also, full disclosure, I have never hosted a book club before. And also, in the kind of realm of full disclosure, I've never even been to a book club before. So I don't know, I might be doing this completely wrong. But you know what? We're just going to have a great time. Give me your feedback. Let me know how I did. Because I want to maybe do this, maybe not every month, maybe every other month. We will see. Let me know, what do you think? Should we do book club every month? Should we do book of the month? Or should we do book for, every other month? What do you think? Let me know. Also, I just want to say as well, if you've not read the book, that's absolutely fine. Sometimes as makers, again, we don't have time to sit and read. You might not want to listen to an audiobook, and that might not be your journey. So I'm also going to be discussing the films today as well. Now, if you haven't managed to watch the films, down below in the notes, I am going to link a playlist where I have linked 3 different versions of Rebecca. You have the 1940s version of Rebecca, you have the 1979 version of Rebecca, the 1997 version as well. And then if you go to Netflix, you can get the 2020 version of Rebecca. And I am going to be discussing today the book and those 4 films. Also, again, before we just start discussing and going into real in-depth, really digging through this book, there is going to be spoilers. I am going to be discussing the bones of this book, the bones of these films. So if you haven't seen or read, please, if you don't want to spoil it, stop watching right now. Go and digest that content and then come back to here, because I don't want to be kind of ruining this for you, okay? Some people like spoilers. If you like a spoiler, stick around and we're going to be discussing this in full. So if this is your first time tuning into my channel, I'll do a little introduction. My name is Daphne Du Maurier. I crochet, I paint, I do lots and lots of different things. I upload on Wednesdays. We have our Chit Chat and Crochet podcast. And on Sundays, we have like basically what we've made that week. So it's like a crochet project of the week situation. My favorite kind of TV show is a monster of the week. So I kind of think of it like that. It's a little maker of the week. Sorry, I got distracted by how cute Tilly is. Tilly, say hi to everybody. You say hi to everybody. She gets cuddly in the morning. That's when she wants a cuddle time. But a lot of the time, she just wants to be left alone, left to her own devices, wants to go sit on the carpet and not be fussed. So in the morning, I take all I can get. Or if I just come home from work, she wants to have a snug then, which I'm like, okay, we'll cuddle. So the last few weeks, I've been extremely shocked with the progression of this channel. It's been absolutely amazing. I mean, some of you will know because you've been here since the very start. So seeing that channel grow is probably shocking to me and shocking to you guys as well. So I'm a very goal-orientated person, very goal-orientated person. And this year, I've decided I want to try to get 5,000 subscribers. That's my goal. So by the 23rd of September is my birthday. I was born on the autumn equinox. I'm wearing my autumn cardi. Today actually feels like autumn, which is making me feel like really, really happy. So by that day, what I would like to do is if I've hit 5,000 subscribers, by then, I'm going to do a giveaway hamper. And in the hamper, I'm going to crochet a basket out of the lovely Aldi wool, kind of like the Easter baskets. I'm going to put some wool in there, I'm going to put some of my favourite hooks in there, maybe some little projects in there, just bits and bobs to say thank you for helping me reach this goal. If you'd have told me last November when I started uploading again consistently that I would hit the 1,000 mark, and like right now I'm approaching 2,000, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. It's absolutely crazy. So I just want to say again, thank you so much to every single person that has helped me. Genuinely, you'll never know how much that actually means to me. And if you are not subscribed, go over and give us a subscribe. We have a really amazing community here, especially like in the live videos. So obviously this is a premiere, so what we do is we have our live chat at 7 p.m. when this goes up, and there's always like the same people in there. One person that I always see is Wendy, and if Wendy's not in the live, I'm like, where is she? Where's Wendy? She's amazing. Jamavol Crafts as well, Higgy's Mug, or Heather, all those people, they always tune in every single week. And Emma as well, Emma's Garden Kitchen, always tune in, and we always have a lovely conversation. So it always makes me like so happy when you guys come and we have our little combo. So let's get on with talking about Rebecca. This book opens in the most amazing way. Do you want to go down, Tilly? I feel like you want to leave me. She's got to that point now. She wants to go. There we go. Let's get our crochet as well, because if Madame Tilly, she doesn't want to snug no more, we can start doing our crochet. So I'm working again on that sweater, and what I'm going to start doing today is I'm going to start doing the arms. A lot of this has been on pause because of, you know, working on sort of Easter baskets and other projects that I've got on. So what I've kind of said to myself is this is what I'm going to work on when I'm doing the podcasts. So I'm kind of like compartmentalizing those things and be like, right, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I think I've said this before in a previous episode, how I found this book. This is actually my copy of Rebecca that I bought many, many moons ago when I was on a holiday when I was 22 in Cornwall, and I'd gone to the Jamaica Inn. The Jamaica Inn is a place that Daphne Du Maurier stayed, and she wrote a book called The Jamaica Inn, which maybe we could do that as a future book. What do we think? Has anyone read The Jamaica Inn before? Oh, I absolutely love The Jamaica Inn. It's such like a dark and moody book. Also, the last time I went there, they had absolutely loads of Poldark stuff. Anybody a Poldark fan? I am a Poldark fan. I love a bit of Poldark. Love a bit of Poldark. I think I just like things that are set in Cornwall, just things that are set by the sea. I live kind of by the sea. It doesn't take me that long to get to the sea, so it makes me I feel a bit weird when I go far inland. Ideally, I would live right on the ocean. Sorry, I'm going on a full-on tangent. So when I went to the Jamaica Inn, the people that I was with, they weren't really that bothered. They were just like, cool, a pub that we can stop off. And I was just like, this pub has a gift shop. I'm clearly going to the gift shop. Why does it have a gift shop? And this is where I ended up discovering the author Daphne Du Maurier. So there was a whole table right in the middle, and it had all of her books on. And the one that's, obviously I bought the Jamaica Inn because that's what the pub was named after. But the one that stood out to me the most was this book, Rebecca. Because what you see, first you got Daphne Du Maurier's name, like that kind of shows to me when you see a book with an author, when their name is bigger than the title, it's like you're buying it for the author, if that makes sense. But Rebecca, that name, Rebecca, like who is Rebecca? What was going on? I was being drawn into that book just with that one name. One thing I love about Daphne Du Maurier is she creates these very well-rounded female characters. They're shrouded sometimes in mystery and kind of like you don't really understand what is going on. Are they sort of a heroine? Are they, are they a baddie? We don't know. Like My Cousin Rachel, that's another one of my favorite books as well. And all through that book, you don't know if Cousin Rachel, is she got good intentions or has she got ill intentions. And I think that she just has this really amazing way of kind of showing this like humanity within women. I think she's definitely a feminist author, and I think that she was extremely ahead of her time. I mean, the fact that Rebecca, this was published in 1938 and it's never gone out of print. So I feel like that should speak such volumes to the quality of Daphne Du Maurier's writing. So I bought this book and we were camping, and I immediately just started to read this book. My friends were quite upset with me at the time because they were like, you're on holiday and you're with us and we should be like hanging out and, drinking and doing what like 22-year-olds do. But I was just like, screw you guys. I am reading this book because I am absolutely obsessed, and I couldn't put it down. All the way home from Cornwall, I just plowed through this book, and I remember my friend sat there in the back of the car and she was kind of like getting like all like a bit moody with me because I wasn't sort of paying attention. The people that I went on holiday with, I don't actually talk to anymore. And I think that was like a big kind of tell point. It's like, just leave me alone. Just let me be. Just let me be. At least once a year, I read Rebecca. And the reason why I wanted to choose this book is because of what I've learned about myself while reading this book, the way my opinions change. What I think is really interesting is when you really like something like Rebecca, is just writing down what your thoughts are and thinking about like how your thoughts, how they change, how your opinions like change towards the characters. And you can see this personal development and this growth when you do that. I have actually learned so much just about myself when reading this book, the way that I perceive the characters and their actions. And you can see how much I can see how much I've actually grown from this experience. I remember how transformative this book was for me when I first read it. I think this was genuinely the first book that when I read it, I felt like I was transported to the place. It literally was all encompassing. It literally took me into the pages. I was picturing what Mandalay looked like. I was picturing what the grounds of Mandalay looked like. That was so important. And most importantly, I was picturing what Rebecca was like as well. I remember when I first read this book, I was definitely in maybe not a great place in my life. I was dealing with a lot of body image stuff. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And reading this, I remember like really relating to the heroine, Mrs. De Winter. I remember really relating to that feeling of just feeling inadequate, feeling like you have this partner who doesn't really care about you that much, and understanding those feelings that she might have been having, those feelings of kind of this person doesn't really kind of want to be, in this relationship. And there's always this kind of hanging over like feeling of there's somebody better than me. Obviously, I do not feel like that now. That is not something that I feel like at all. I remember as a 22-year-old, those feelings, I really related to that main character. So do you remember the first time you read Rebecca? Was it on this podcast for this? Was it just, tell me what the story was. How did you come across Rebecca? What was that story? Because I love hearing how other people came to these things that we all have the shared love for. So let's start talking about the plot of Rebecca. So first, the book is about an unnamed woman, the heroine. So I might refer to her as the heroine. I might refer to her as Mrs. De Winter. I'm probably going to be bouncing between those names. And the book opens up in Monte Carlo, where you see Mrs. De Winter, the heroine, working as a companion to an older, wealthy lady, an American lady named Mrs. Van Hopper. And the portrait that is painted of Mrs. Van Hopper is that she's this rude, overbearing, kind of crass lady who's a sort of a, modern day terms, a clout chaser. She's thinking about the landed gentry. She is really thinking about status. That's what she, thinks about. And it's everything that the heroine kind of stands against. She finds her so embarrassing the way she handles herself and so kind of over the top. And I think Mrs. Van Hopper, I mean, she sounds like a terrible, terrible person in terms of like being like wealthy and, stubbing a cigarette out in like face cream and all these like kind of things. But I'm just like, girl, you go get what you need to go get. So they are sitting in the hotel in Monte Carlo, and this is where they see Maximilian de Winter. Maximilian de Winter, who owns Manderley, a fantastic home in Cornwall. He's very, very elusive. He's standoffish. He doesn't want to kind of, be around anybody. So this is where our heroine learns about Maxim de Winter. She's heard of Manderley before, being from England, and she was on holiday in the West Country, and she tells this story about how she sees Manderley on a postcard when she's a child, and she had the option of buying sweets or buying a postcard, and she chooses this beautiful postcard of Manderley. And it's, this kind of like wow moment when she ends up being able to go there. So they are sat in the hotel, and Mrs. Van Hopper starts telling her all about Maxim de Winter and how he's lost his wife Rebecca to a drowning in a bay near their home in Manderley. And they say how people say that she was so wonderful and so beautiful, and he's absolutely lost without his wife. So they end up having dinner with Maxim de Winter, and Mrs. Van Hopper is asking lots of questions, talking about people that they might know, people trying to find a common ground. But Maxim de Winter is absolutely besotted with this young companion, the heroine. He just wants to know more information about this young person, which Mrs. Van Hopper is not very, very happy about. Now, after this brief sort of dinner, Mrs. Van Hopper gets sick. She ends up in bed with the flu. So it means that the companion, our lovely heroine, she is free to go and explore Monty while Mrs. Van Hopper recovers. This is where she ends up being escorted around Monte Carlo by Maximilian de Winter. They get to know each other over these brief few days. It's not really discussed. I mean, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a week, it could just be a few days. We don't really know how fast these two actually end up falling in love, but they end up having this little courtship where they're kind of meeting up and kind of going out for drives, and they end up falling in love with each other. This is when Mrs. Van Hopper basically ends up recovering from her illness and is sick and tired of Monte Carlo, and she wants to go back to New York. This ends up with the heroine confessing her love for Maxim de Winter and saying how she doesn't want to like leave. It's not really a full declaration of love. It's more kind of saying like, I'd be terribly upset if I had to go to New York, and because obviously she's not going to completely confess her love for him. This is where Max gives her an ultimatum. She can go to New York with Mrs. Van Hopper, or she can go with him to Manderley. And she automatically thinks that he like needs like a secretary or some kind of help, and he's just being kind. And he's like, no. And this is like an iconic line in this book, which does get used within the movies, which is, I'm asking you to marry me, you little fool. Which is, that's not really a nice way to ask someone to marry you. I'm like, I'm sorry, if Red was like, I want you to marry me, you little fool, I'd be like, who are you talking to? But you gotta think of when this was wrote. Maybe this was kind of like seen as romantic. I don't know. But I would not be for having my future husband call me a fool in the middle of me asking him to marry him. So, the two have decided that they're going to go back to Manderley, but there is a problem. Mrs. Van Hopper, she is literally waiting in the car, ready to go to the train station to get her butt back to New York. Max ends up telling her that you know, they're going to they're going to be going to get married. They're going to honeymoon in Venice. And to Max's face, Mrs. Van Hopper is very, very polite and overjoyed. As soon as she is alone with the heroine, though, she makes it very, very clear that she thinks that he is marrying her for companion only. She is not, he's not actually in love with her. Kind of sort of saying to her and affirming all these deepest fears that she has. She also tells her that she doesn't think she has it in her to run a house like Mandalay as well. And that is the last we hear of Mrs. Van Hopper. The couple, they go, they marry, they honeymoon, and then they are on their way back to Mandalay. I have this like very, very distinct image of Mandalay and what it actually looks like in my head. And I think that's the thing with books, is it can be so, like my impression of what Mandalay will probably be different to what your impression of Mandalay is, just with the way our brains work, our backgrounds, our influences that we've had. I have this very distinct image of what Rebecca looks like as well. So I'll be talking a little bit about that in a minute, about the images of Rebecca and should it be shown or should it not be shown. I think that's a very, very interesting thing to discuss. Mandalay, Rebecca has imprinted onto Mandalay. It's very apparent that Rebecca made Mandalay what it is today. She is the success. The reason why that house is so amazing is because of Rebecca. Every single part of that home has got her impression on it. She arrives at Mandalay, the whole staff is out to greet them, and this is where she meets the formidable Mrs. Danvers, the Ice Queen Mrs. Danvers. Mrs. Danvers is the housekeeper, and she was we'll learn throughout the book that she was very, very close with Rebecca. The heroine is frightened of the staff, because she was staff. She is from a working class background. She is not used to having people waiting on her hand and foot or even asking for things. This is not something that comes naturally to her. Mrs. Danvers, she idolized Rebecca. You learn throughout the book that she raised Rebecca as a child. So she was like her nurse, and then she probably became like her lady's maid. Then she came with her to Mandalay when she married Maxim. And then she ends up becoming the housekeeper and running Mandalay, but also still at Rebecca's beck and call, like her lady's maid. She was everything to Rebecca, and Rebecca was everything to her. And throughout her time at Mandalay, one of the biggest points of feeling inadequate is because of Mrs. Danvers. At any chance she can get, she will point out to her that she is not meant for this. So when they arrive, they end up going to where they're going to be staying, the bedrooms. And she's like, oh, we can't hear the sea from here. And Mrs. Danvers points out that this is not the West Wing. The biggest rooms of the house are in the West Wing, and it runs down to the sea. You can see lawns stretching as far as the sea, and you can hear the sea, and they're beautiful rooms. They're large rooms. That's where Mrs. De Winter's bedroom is. She talks about her like she's still very much present and very still much alive, and makes the heroine feel like an intruder in her own home. Over time, the heroine ends up learning more and more about Rebecca. It's like these little things that just keep like coming out, like going to the morning room and seeing her papers, seeing her handwriting, eventually going into the West Wing and seeing how everything is still laid out like she's just popped out. She's still very much present within that space. Putting on a coat and putting her hand in the pocket and pulling out a handkerchief with the embroidered letter R on. You would just freak out. It does kind of feel like she's been sort of transplanted there. Like that's like the feeling I think that I get when I'm reading this. It's like she's just been picked up, plonked into this situation, and kind of expected to just kind of crack on and know what she's doing. And Max isn't really helping her with any of that. She eventually ends up going to a boathouse, which is down in the bay. And this is where you end up learning about how, you know, Rebecca would end up going to like this cottage down in the bay, the old boathouse, and this is where she would sort of have these, you know, midnight picnics. And it's like you're kind of pulling at a thread. You're getting this kind of little bits of information, and suddenly everything all comes at once. One thing I will say is there is a depiction of a gentleman in there called Ben, which is a very uneducated and not very nice portrayal of somebody with a learning disability. There's certain sort of words that she uses that makes me very, very upset and very, very sad when they talk about this particular person, who is quite a key plot point towards the end of the book. So every time the heroine mentions Rebecca's name, Max seizes up. He gets angry, and it's quite frightening for her. Very, very frightening for her. And the way she is reading this is that he is still in love with her. Because what you've got to think is she's being told by everyone around her how fabulous Rebecca was, how she was the most beautiful creature that people had ever seen. People were just drawn to her. Babies were drawn to her. Animals were drawn to her. She was the most amazing person that you could ever think of. And then on top of that, every single time she's mentioned, Max goes into like this furious rage. So I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like for the young heroine. Now, she ends up meeting Max's sister, Beatrice, which I absolutely think it's hilarious because my sister-in-law is also called Beatrice. And we have a very, very close relationship, and I absolutely love her. And I feel like it was just destined that I was going to have a sister-in-law named Beatrice. I love the character of Beatrice in this book. I think she's this very like strong, kind of no nonsense lady. She likes nature and going on walks, and she just seems like a very like hard kind of character, like this very kind of like, you know, no nonsense and kind of uppity and kind of like, oh, you know, everything is fine. Just like absolutely hilarious. Like horse girl. I think she just screams horse girl. I have this image in my head of this very kind of staunch character of like this very staunch woman, this very strong kind of robust kind of lady. Like that is what I've got in my head when I'm reading about the character Beatrice. Now they go and visit Max's grandmother, who is in a home. She has dementia, and it really does not go well. The old lady is very confused by her presence. She doesn't understand why she's there. Where is Rebecca? Why can't Rebecca come and see me? Which is just very, very sad, really, for everybody involved. But again, it's used as a tool to drive home how she's not really supposed to be there. Like that's the feeling that she's getting. Now, one day when Max is away in London, our heroine ends up meeting Jack Favell. Jack Favell is Rebecca's cousin. He's invited to Mandalay by Mrs. Danvers, and they have this encounter which feels quite uncomfortable. She kind of understands that this gentleman is not really welcome in the home, but Mrs. Danvers ends up inviting him anyway. She learns about how close he was to Rebecca, how Max doesn't like him. And Mrs. Danvers and the heroine end up coming to this kind of like agreement. She's like, I'm not going to tell Max, you know, I think we should be friends. Mrs. Danvers agrees, and everything seems to be going okay. It's also at this time that they decide that they're going to resurrect the Mandalay Ball, which was something that Rebecca would throw, which was a huge costume ball and was the event of the season. Everybody loved the costume ball. And Mrs. Danvers agrees to help the heroine organise this ball and help get her costume together. She suggests dressing up as Caroline de Winter. They talk a lot throughout the book about the gallery of pictures that is hung within the home. This home has been in his family for generations, and all of the De Winters all have their portraits all up in this room, sort of dating back centuries. And one iconic painting is of Caroline de Winter, which was one of his great aunts. And Mrs. Danvers suggests to the heroine, how great would it be if you dressed up as Caroline de Winter? I can get this from London. We can organise this. It'll be fabulous. You're going to look amazing. Just realised I've been doing this with a 4.5 hook. That's what's so annoying about the prim hooks, is this is a very similar colour to the 4.5. So I have just been doing the arm and I thought to myself, those stitches aren't looking right. So I'm going to have to just frog what I've just done and start again. So let's go back to, while I'm frogging this, let's go back to talking about the costume ball. So she's decided she's going to get this costume made. You know, Mrs. Danvers is helping her. Everything seems hunky-dory. Everything is fine until the night of the ball. So our heroine decides that she is going to keep this costume a secret because she wants to surprise her husband. She has the costume made, she has the wig, everything. She looks just like Caroline de Winter. The night of the ball, she heads on down the stairs. She has someone announce her. And as she gets to the top and Max sees her, everyone is horrified. And the reason why everyone is horrified is that is the costume that the late Rebecca chose to do on the very last ball as she was alive. And people kind of said, like Beatrice said, like, I thought I saw a ghost, you know, seeing you at the top of the stairs dressed like that. Maxim flips out. He is shouting at her to go upstairs, go and get changed. The poor heroine just flees the scene in tears. She is absolutely devastated. She goes upstairs, she just puts on a dress and has to put on this brave face throughout this ball, feeling the entire time anger, obviously, towards Mrs. Danvers, because Mrs. Danvers has done this on purpose. No one believes her. Max thinks she's done it on purpose. And she just thinks, this man, he hates me. He doesn't love me. This is just the worst thing that could ever happen. This thing that she's been, the first time that she's kind of felt comfortable at Mandalay, everything destroyed, all because of Mrs. Danvers and her hatred. The next day, the heroine and Mrs. Danvers have an encounter in the West Wing. It's this very uncomfortable encounter that they have. This is where she learns a lot about Rebecca's personality and the closeness of Rebecca and Mrs. Danvers. She talks about the incident, her passing in a lot of depth. She talks about how Max can never ever love her, how she's inadequate. Mrs. Danvers really plays on this young woman's emotions. She really tries to really get beneath her skin, say that she's not supposed to be here, that you're in the place of Rebecca, you'll never be Mrs. De Winter. And she tries to convince this poor young woman who's in this very fragile state to jump out of the window. Absolutely horrific. In the middle of kind of talking, they're standing on this kind of, with this window open. She's broken from this trance when they hear the rockets going off over the bay. And you can hear shouts of people because a boat has run aground. So everyone's going down to the bay to help this boat in this kind of like very difficult state. Oh, God, difficult state. Look at me with a difficult state. All this wool going everywhere from frogging it. I'm all over the place. So the young heroine is running down to the bay to see if she can find Max. And this is where the discovery happens of Rebecca's boat. So the divers, they're going down to the wreck in the bay. And this is where they discover Rebecca's boat. Now, the story was Rebecca's boat was lost at sea. The boat was never recovered and she washed up about 2 months later. This is not the case. The divers find the boat and inside the cabin is the body of Rebecca. It's identified by the jewellery that she is wearing, the clothes that are still on her body. Everything is still there. Now, this prompts Max to talk to the young heroine and tell her the truth about his wife. So, because of the discovery of Rebecca's body, this really prompts Max to tell her the truth about their relationship. So Max tells her how he hated Rebecca, how she was evil. She was an evil woman. On their honeymoon, she told him that no matter what, she will be continuing with the life that she led as a single woman. She'll keep her flat in London. She will do whatever she please. And in return, she would make Mandalay the success that it is today. And he was really driven by this worry of this protection of his family name. He didn't want to, what would that look like if he divorced immediately after getting married? So to protect his family name, to prevent scandal, he chooses to stay with Rebecca. And Rebecca has multiple affairs. She is just living her life the way she wants to live her life. She's holding up her side of the bargain as well. She is keeping Mandalay and making it the home that it is. No one would suspect anything because everybody loves Rebecca. She's like the master manipulator. She also had a very long affair with Jack Favell, which is obviously the reason why Max is very uncomfortable about Jack Favell coming to the home. Jack Favell is also her cousin. Yeah, so we'll just leave that there. So this night he follows her down to the boathouse, and he tells her that he wants a divorce from her. Doesn't want to be married to her anymore. He wants a divorce. And she like laughs at him and starts taunting him, hinting to him that she is pregnant. She's pregnant. She's carrying Jack Favell's baby. That there's no way that anyone would be able to prove otherwise. And that, basically her child, not his child, will carry on the winter name and be the heir of Mandalay. And Max will be made a fool of. This pushes Max to the brink, and this is where he takes his wife's life. He shoots his wife, and it's this very, very horrific kind of like moment in the book, and he takes her body out to the boat and he sinks it. And he is known this entire time, which kind of explains his reactions to every single time Rebecca is mentioned. Every time Rebecca is mentioned, it sends him into this rage, into this like stress rage. Because obviously, he just murdered his wife. So it's not about love. He's murdered his wife. So that is the whole situation with that. Now, you would think that our heroine would be shocked, appalled, scared, freaked out, all the above. But instead, she is just so happy that he doesn't love Rebecca and that he loves her. He promises that she's going to stick by him and that they're going to get through this together as a couple. So, an inquest happens, it goes to court, and there's a man who worked on Rebecca's boat, and his reputation was damaged because everyone was saying that it was his shoddy work, the reason why Mrs. De Winter's boat went down, and he lost orders. So he wanted to examine the boat, and what he sees is the sea cocks were left open, and there was holes driven into the hull. And that is the reason why the boat was scuttled, basically. They sunk the boat. They're trying to determine the cause of death throughout this. So that is what they're trying to figure out. Now, what is the cause of death in the inquest is that she unalived herself. So that is basically what the cause was. Now, Jack Favell is not happy about this, and he goes up to Mandalay with a letter that Rebecca had wrote him the night that she passed. And in the letter, what it says is, "Come and meet me at the cottage, I have something to tell you." So this ends up pushing this huge investigation, and what he's asking for his silence, to not disclose this letter, is basically money. He's blackmailing Max, and Max is like having none of it. He's like, right, I'm going to call my mate Colonel Julian. He's going to come and we can discuss this at length. They call Mrs. Danvers in, and Mrs. Danvers brings out Rebecca's appointment book. She is absolutely disgusted through this entire time. And Favell is basically saying, like, we were in love. And Mrs. Danvers is like, she didn't love any of you. She laughed at you all. Men were just playthings to her, which is kind of like quite out there for a book of this time, I think. Just like this portrayal of Rebecca and like who she was. So they figure out that she ended up going to London on the day she passed. And they decide that they're going to drive down to London to find out what it actually was that she went to see this doctor about. Max is like, we're done, we're finished. As soon as they get to this doctor, they're going to say she was pregnant. And they're going to say that I killed her because she was pregnant. So all those things. They end up going to the doctor where they realise she should actually use a fake name. She uses the name Danvers. This doctor is a woman specialist, and he's not the type of specialist that deals with pregnancies. He deals with women's reproductive organs and sometimes the things that affect those. And what happens is they find out that Rebecca only had months to live. So it looks like Rebecca has taken her life. And basically, the conclusion of the book is that she knew she was going to die, and she prompted Max to basically take that life and put her out of her misery. So the kind of final thought on Rebecca is that she knew that she was going to pass, and instead of going through this painful process, that she was going to get one last thing over on Max, and she was going to push him to the point where he took her life. And it's like this kind of like one last, like, you know, middle finger up at him. The way I kind of look at it is she didn't want to go out in pain. Maybe she didn't want to take her own life, and she just pushed him to the point where she knew that he would do it, and she wouldn't have to go through that painful process. So Max and Mrs. De Winter, they think that they are completely scot-free, that this is great. They've, you know, this has been determined that Rebecca took her own life, all of this stuff, she wasn't pregnant, and they are now free to live their life, and they are driving back to Mandalay. And in the distance, what they can see is this light, and they're like, is that the daybreak? We don't know. And they realise that Mandalay is completely ablaze, and it burns to the ground. And the end of the book, it kind of talks about them. They are on the continent somewhere. Mandalay's gone. They don't have a home, and they're just kind of bouncing from place to place, like very nomadic. It doesn't end on a positive note. Mrs. Danvers and Jack Favell, they are still out there. They are still holding a lot of anger and resentment towards Max. So it's kind of like this ghost that's kind of hanging over their head now. Rebecca was hanging. They're also out there in the darkness lurking. So it's like a very kind of like down ending. I think it's a really interesting way to end the book. It's like this kind of feeling where Max is like, oh, this is great. My guilt of murdering my wife is resolved. It's all resolved. Rebecca was dying anyway. She would have wanted this. To kind of end it on that note, and then to have Mandalay burn down, to be like, no, you know, this is a bad thing that you've done, and that is your punishment now. That was Rebecca's home, and you do not get to live there. So I hope that I've kind of summarised the plot. I think I went on and on and on and on and on. And there's so much more. Like, I feel like I haven't given enough, but also too much, and I just don't know. So we're going to move on to some of the plot themes now. Obviously, grief is a big plot theme. So what you have is this perceived grief with Max, and then you have this actual grief with Mrs. Danvers. I actually feel like as the years have gone on, like the way I first perceived this book is I was like fully in the heroine's camp. I was like, this is great. This has worked out really well. But again, that is the perception of a 22-year-old with not a lot of life experience. The experiences that I now have really shaped and changed my perception of a lot of these characters. Like Mrs. Danvers is a woman going through an enormous amount of grief. She has raised this child. She has gone with her through her entire life like a mother. That's how I read this. Some people read it as like a sapphic relationship. I don't. I read it as like a mother-daughter, best friend kind of relationship. That's how I kind of see their friendship and their kind of relationship together. And think what that must be like, kind of maybe suspecting something has gone astray, because she knows the real situation between Max and Rebecca. She knows that. So thinking to myself, maybe this isn't right. Where's he gone? Why is he leaving? Why do I seem to be the only one grieving here? No one's asking her like how she is, because at the end of the day, it's like an employer relationship. So maybe people aren't thinking they're as close as they are. But she basically raised this, you know, woman from child to where she ends up now. And not only has she lost the person that, you know, she confided in, Rebecca confided in her, this deep, deep loss. She now has this young, like 22-year-old, 21-year-old woman coming in and just taking her place. So think the headspace that she might have been. And this is not excusing anything she does, but explaining like the headspace. Then we talk about the perceived grief of Max. I think Du Maurier does a really great way of kind of convincing us really that Max is grieving, that he is a grieving widow with these explosions of grief. Because you think about the stages of grief, anger is one of those stages. So it's a really great way of convincing us as the viewer that he's just in this immense amount of pain and this immense amount of grief towards his, his wife. And I think another key plot is morality as well. Like, how do we perceive a woman like Rebecca? A woman who has gone into this marriage with, maybe not the best intent. She is kind of deceived. She's deceived Max, deceived her husband, convinced him that they're going to have this amazing relationship. And then as soon as they get on their honeymoon, tells him otherwise. And how do we perceive that? Does she deserve to pass? Is that the way that, we look at this woman who has been very open and honest, saying like, this is how I'm going to live my life. We can either go ahead with this, or, not that she was kind of saying go ahead with this or not, but he had the option of taking that on the chin and taking that scandal and kind of moving away from it. I'm also not saying that Rebecca was right, but it is something that he did agree to. I think Rebecca was very direct with her intentions within the marriage. Very, very direct. This is what I'm going to be doing. This is how I'm going to live my life. And for a woman to say that, a woman who knows what she wants, I think it's a very interesting way of sort of seeing her end and seeing her demise, her life, because she's a woman who basically goes and does exactly what she wants, ends up having her life taken from her by a man. I think it's a very, very interesting kind of way of kind of analysing maybe how women are treated in society. And I think about these themes, she's writing about stuff like this in the late 1930s. So I think it's very, very interesting. It's kind of like that thought of, if a woman kind of does whatever she wants, should she be punished for it? And in this book, she is punished with the most horrific way of punishing someone. And I think it's also very interesting that Rebecca always knew about his anger, and she kind of pushed him and knew what buttons to press to push him to that point. So, as I mentioned, I read this book every single year, and I think it's so interesting to see how my perception of the characters has kind of formed and how things have changed just with the way that I kind of have matured over the years. Obviously, I've been talking about this throughout. I remember the first time I read this, just feeling very sympathetic towards the heroine, relating to the heroine, was like, okay, that's cool, that's all, they're all done with Rebecca. They can go on and live their happy life. This is great. I think what's interesting is how I went from having this very sympathetic kind of view towards Max to now almost hating this character and the way he is. Rebecca, she laid out what things were going to be like, and he had that opportunity to divorce her. It would have been very, very easy for him to catch her in an adulterous act. He would have been able to divorce her. He would have come out of that situation. Obviously, there would have been a scandal, but it wouldn't be his doing. He would have been able to move on. But he put his duty first, and I think it's something that has angered him throughout the years, and it's been building the fact that he couldn't control Rebecca. And I think that kind of leads into the next partner that he ends up with. Instead of somebody who is his equal, it's somebody who is half his age, not from his background, someone from a working class background. And what he does is he creates a power imbalance between him and this very young woman. She is able to be controlled. She is an extension of him. She is not his equal. And I think Max can be seen as predatory in terms of his approach for the new kind of Mrs. De Winter. 100% predatory. He's not looking for an equal. He's not looking for somebody who's headstrong and wild and kind of knows their own mind. He wants somebody that he can shape and that he can mold. And choosing her for his partner, it's very easy for him to be this controlling influence within the relationship. So what do you guys think? How did you perceive this situation? Did you think that, Rebecca was evil? Did you think Rebecca got a hard rap? Do you think that Max is a terrible person? Or do you think that that is true love between the heroine and Max? Let me know. I would love to know what you guys' thoughts are. So a question that kind of plagues me is what happened to Danvers and what happened to Jack Favell. They are just out there. They are, hiding in the shadows. What is the situation? What is happening? What is going on? Like, that is something that kind of plagues me. What plagued you about this book? Is there anything unanswered? And I like the fact that it's left unanswered. I think that a lot of the versions, which I'll talk about in a moment, the adaptations, they bring a resolution to that character. And I like it better, the fact that she is still out there and they're not going to get away with this. Like, that is the kind of thing that's held over their heads. And I think that is proper and that's what should have happened. So yeah, let me know what is your unanswered questions. Now, there are 2 other books that have been published as sequels to Rebecca. I have not read them. They're wrote by different authors. The first one was published in 1993 and it's just called Mrs. De Winter, and it's by Susan Hill. And then there's another one called Rebecca's Tale, and that is by Sally Bowman, and that was published in 2001. Both of these books are set after the events that happened in Rebecca. And I've been quite apprehensive, really, of delving into these books. I'm a little bit unsure of whether I want to tackle those because I'm so attached to this. But let me know what you think. Should we read them? Should we not? I know that the one in 1993 was not that kind of critically held, really. Sally Bowman's book, though, has got kind of good reviews and it is approved by the Du Maurier estate. I'm not sure if Susan Hill's book is approved by the Du Maurier estate, so I'm not too sure. So maybe we could just do the Sally Bowman, the 2001 one. Let me know. Sorry, I just had a big coughing fit there. I've had to cut it out. But yeah, let me know. Should we read the sequel? Should we not? Or should we just leave it? Let me know. So my initial reaction to the book, or my initial expectations to the book, I should say, are kind of hard because I bought this book, I first read this like 15 years ago, so it's kind of hard to remember. But when I kind of think about it and kind of analyse it, in my head, you're looking at this cover and you see like these gates, and my reaction is kind of, gothic novel. I mean, the back of the book, working as a lady's companion, that sets the time period, because ladies' companions, that's not really a thing anymore. I think probably my initial expectation probably would have been like gothic novel, because on the back of this book, it actually refers to Jane Eyre, and Jane Eyre is oh my God, that's one of my favourite books of all time. I love Jane Eyre. Do we like Jane Eyre? I think I'm more of a Bronte girl than an Austen girl. I think I'm more kind of like in the realm of like, not like, I'm sitting in a drawing room and I'm waiting to marry a man who'll give me £30 a year. Oh, I think I'm more like, don't go trusting big man at big house. Don't go trusting him. He's got his wife kept in tower, I think that's don't be going up to big house. Don't be looking at him. No, I wouldn't trust him. Wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. I think that's more the vibe that I'm into, rather like, don't trust the man in the big house rather than waiting for a man who's going to come give me £30 a year. I think that's more my vibe. Love a bit of the Brontes. Should we tackle the Brontes? I think, well, we are going to tackle the Brontes because are we aware that they're making a new adaptation of Wuthering Heights? And that there is discourse all around this making of Wuthering Heights. I love Wuthering Heights. I absolutely love it. So I think it is something that we could delve into, obviously, more towards next February, and the film is coming out. I think that could be fun for us all. One thing that I will say about this book as well is I don't tend to often go into a project blindly. I usually do my research. So it's usually like, I've watched the film and then I'll read the book, or someone's told me about the book and like, you have to read this, and then I'll go and I'll read the book. But this is something that I went in completely blind. I knew nothing about this. I just read the cover. I was like, yeah, cool, I'll buy that. And I think it's so important to try things like that. Don't read the synopsis, go into something blind, because I feel like you end up having this deeper appreciation for it when it kind of like comes out, because you're like discovering the story. Although I'm someone that goes for spoilers, so I know that I should take my own advice. But that was like a huge thing for me with this book. And I think like a giant takeaway, which again, I've said throughout like what I've been talking about throughout this entire podcast, is it's so important when you love something like that to go back and reanalyze it, reread it, and kind of go back in with a different, fresh perspective. I think that that's really important, because you learn so much about you and your development and how you've progressed through life. I think it's really, that's something really that this time rereading is something that I've really kind of considered. And I think it's something that I probably wouldn't have connected the measure of maturity, the measure of progression through analyzing characters in a storybook. It's so interesting, this way of kind of seeing how you've grown and you've matured. So I want to talk about my favorite bits. Obviously the opening. Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. That, for me, if you are not taken in by that, you shouldn't read Rebecca. That one sentence, that just takes me into a place. It just takes me directly to that spot. I feel like I'm looking through her eyes as she goes through in her dreamlike state back to the wreck of their previous home. And it just makes me want to know more about what happened. Another favourite part is that I wish I was a woman of 36 wearing black satin with a string of pearls. That was some foreshadowing. That is a key part. That is Du Maurier telling us about what Max is like. Because do you remember what he says to her? He asks her to never ever wear black satin and a string of pearls. And he says, if you wear, you wouldn't be with me. Which, to me, that really kind of gives a huge clue to what he's after. He doesn't want maturity. He doesn't want his equal. I think that's a huge clue to Max and his intentions. He doesn't want somebody who's a woman of 36. He doesn't want somebody who is on par or an equal. And it's something where sophistication, you think black satin and a string of pearls, sophistication, and he relates that to Rebecca. And what she reads that as is, oh my gosh, he doesn't want me to remind him of Rebecca. It's like, no, he doesn't want you to remind him of Rebecca because he hated her. And obviously the conversation that Mrs. De Winter has with Danvers after the ball, that really haunting monologue where she's basically trying to convince her to jump. I'm not going to read the whole monologue, but it's so disturbing. The way she gets herself into her head is just, horrible, creepy. But yeah, a really great part of the book. Right, so I have just begun to edit this footage. I filmed for 2 hours talking about the book and talking about the films. It makes me laugh so much because at the start of the Easter holidays, Red's cousin came to come and stay with us for a little bit, and she was looking on our bookshelf and she was like, wow, you've got a lot of Daphne Du Maurier. Rebecca, I've read Rebecca. And she said to my husband, does Steph like Rebecca? And he was like, yeah. And she was like, well, what does she think of it? What does she think of the new films? And he was like, you're just going to need to ask her. She likes Rebecca. She's got a lot of opinions. She's not just watched one film. She's watched like 4. You just need to speak to her about it. So I don't know why I thought this podcast was going to be anywhere under the 60-minute mark. I don't know why I thought that. I've talked for so long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up. This week talking about the book. Next week, let's talk about all the films. Because otherwise, this is going to be 2 hours of me talking at you. And we're all probably getting a little bit tired. So let's wrap this up. So thank you so much if you've made it to the end of the video, hearing me talk about Rebecca. Thank you so much for listening to me. I found this very cathartic. I feel like I just want people that I can talk to about this book. Maybe we should even do a live stream after the movies. Let me know what you think. Whether we do book club this week, next week we'll watch the movies, and then the week after that we could do a live stream where we just talk about what we thought about the entire experience. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much. And remember, if you like crochet, if you like crafting, if you like books, if you like films, if you like all of those things, make sure that you give this video a like, give me a subscribe, and I will see you either on Sunday where we talk about our craft projects for the week, or I will see you in the next Chit Chat and Crochet podcast. Bye.